The significance of the gold medal is huge. It's the highest award that an architect can achieve in Aotearoa. The gold medalists are chosen by a group of their peers. It honours a body of design work. They also are awarded for work beyond design. So it might be academia, or it might be research, or it might be community work, and really their wide contribution to our community of architects, but also to the public. I'm really pleased to announce that the 2021 recipient of the Te Kāhui Whaihanga New Zealand Institute of Architects Gold Medal is Julie Stout.
My life has always sort of been dualities, with sailing and architecture. Our first trip, we only had 6 months. So we went up through Tonga, across to Fiji, up Vanuatu and across to Loyalty Islands, New Caledonia, back to New Zealand. 6 months, heaven. Our second trip, we were going with no idea of coming back. We were just going. It's just the two of us on this tiny yacht. You know, there's not a lot of action around. So I did a lot of drawing of David, just because he was the animate object in sight. David doing the dishes, David fishing. And it was always a great pleasure because it makes you look and really think about what you're drawing. So we drew a lot of architecture. It's a great pleasure now to have these things and look back, and I think it records things more than if I'd sort of taken a photo now. Hickey Street was very influenced by the boat. I mean, it's small for a start, so everything was tiny, though even though when we'd come back, we'd go, man, this place is huge. It's a tiny little house, really. We were very much influenced by dark spaces and how you bring light in, and also the ease of life. You know, living outdoors in summer and just coming back, retreating inside to the fire in winter. It's quite a primal house, really. Because we didn't have a sea view, the back pond became the centre of our universe. I first met Julian when he was 11 and was a wonderful teenager. He really could test your patience. And then he went and did building, and this was one of the first projects that we then started doing together when he was about 20. And it was just such a marvellous thing to work on together, a real team effort. And I think we've sort of continued in that vein ever since, haven't we? Julian has always been a part of our work. He eventually did architecture and came into the practice. So we've been through a lot together.
Yeah, mostly good.
Yeah, all of it good, actually.
She's way wider. She can think in much wider terms than a lot of architects. Distilling a whole lot of things into one and always doing it with human beings as the main driver. She very much designs a house around the activities that people actually will be doing in the house. So you never find that any spaces are bigger or smaller than they need to be. They're always nicely scaled for the activities that are going to go on in them.
Julie was an old friend, and I was some best mates with her brother. So I gave her a call. She said, I'll drop in and see you. And she spent a couple of hours wandering around here. At one stage she said, I just want to sit and get the feel for it. And afterwards she said, I think we'd like to do this job. And that's where it started. And we had a couple of meetings with them, talked about the way we live our lives and what we wanted in a house, more from a lifestyle point of view than anything too prescriptive. And then we went to Auckland. They had some initial concepts that we just loved. So we went with it and ended up with something that enhanced our lives and that we really love. Designing houses is one of the most fun things to do because it involves people's dreams. And they're often not that clear about what they want, but they'll talk to you about it. So you have to decipher it and delve into how people live together, how families interact. I love that sort of sociological
side of it.
Julie's been the chair of Urban Auckland for nearly 20 years, so she's very committed to doing her civic duty, if you like. So I'm sure she sees it in that way, to try and make this a better city. But at the same time, she's pretty easy to be with, you know. She's got a personality that I think people probably just like hanging out with. The low point for Auckland came early in the new century. There were apartments built at the bottom of Simon Street, which were entirely in the wrong place and blocked the view of the harbour. And there were a whole lot of what were called shoebox apartments built on Nelson Street and Hobson Street. And when people saw that those things had happened, there was an awakening. It was recognised that actually this is wrong. We need to have rules, we need to have standards, and we need to get professionals in to help develop that. Urban Auckland has been important in the general fabric of design in this city and raising its status. But in particular, they were the leaders of the campaign to stop Ports of Auckland extending the Bledisloe Wharf further into the harbour. Council, the mayor said can't be done, we can't stop them. Julie and Urban Auckland said that's nonsense, we're not going to put up with that. Took them to the Environment Court and won. An extraordinary achievement, an extraordinary victory, which not only stopped that wharf from being extended, but made, I think, everybody engaged with that whole waterfront area realise that we have to do it better.
You built a united front of people angry about what was proposed.
Yes.
That was very broad.
That to me was the heartening thing, because everyone recognised the importance of the harbour to us and to them.
I mean, I remember the protests down here and people would be looking at each other going,
Gosh,
who are you?
But it was Aucklanders, you know, it was terrific. They were so committed to getting a good piece of architecture. They all valued architecture and what it could bring to Titirangi.
We weren't just building a building. We were building something that we hope would stand for 100, 200 years, that would be a very, very significant community landmark. David and Julie absolutely got that. Every encounter was one where not only were they partly seizing and lifting our imagination, but they also drew us into the design process itself, which for a building like this is quite complex,
There are a number of givens. One, the fabulously urban building of the Lopdale House, existing Lopdale House, set a scale for us to work to match that, to create that urban wall. The second was the topography, a site falling away, which allowed us to stack up the building. So that in itself created an interesting dynamic where the circulation's vertical rather than this enfilade of rooms that you traipse around.
Julie's great strength, I think, is building one of her many great strengths, is building trust and relationships with clients. She was the person in the design team most responsible for supporting the trustees through the intellectual, emotional process of grasping what was going to be required.
In 2014, Last, Loneliest, Loveliest was New Zealand's entry into the Venice Biennale of Architecture. We argued that the tradition of Pacific architecture wasn't erased by modernity, but had survived and interacted with it in a sort of cultural exchange that has become a distinctly New Zealand vernacular. It was fantastic having Ro on board. For a start, he brought that whole depth of knowledge about Māori architecture and the Pacific, but also a whole protocol and way of being together and acting that we'd witnessed in the Pacific. But it was great to then be part of it and to understand the complexity.
Yeah, I think it was the first time that I've been part of and seen an exhibition which really does chart the evolution of architecture in Aotearoa from Pacific origins, from Vale in Samoa, early architecture here in Aotearoa, the adaptations to the climate, and then of course looking at the best of our architecture as it began to evolve to post-World War II. I began to really seek to understand where we were in the world architecturally.
For me, this is where the whole journey of the exhibition really started. Standing here, looking at this patika. What a stunner.
The pinnacle of stone
high
steel
art,
carving,
isn't it? Yes.
There was really that juxtaposition of us commissioning a whatarangi and then placing a model of the museum inside that as both a commentary on the role of museums and the way that they consume taonga, but also honouring this place as a taonga in its own right.
In 2016, the University of Auckland, where I'd worked at on and off for years, asked me to be more permanently involved in their master's program, teaching design, and also a seminar course on public space in the city. I mean, it's just made for me. I mean, it's big ideas and urban space. Sadly, halfway through, we all had to go into lockdown, so we haven't worked together on it, and our final crit was on Zoom. But I'm really looking forward to getting the students back together again. There's blue tack here. I think if everyone can sort of pin, say, 2 of their favourites up, section and a picture. What have you got?
We have 4.
4? Okay, there you go, up there. Here's my soapbox. It's Manukau City Centre. Context, relationships, really important. What your neighbours are doing, and all towards making Manukau a fantastic city for the future, with 10,000 people living in it. I see part of my role as to make sure the students understand and know about our city. Not just, oh, they used to do that 100 years ago and we keep doing it. No, we're a new city. We've got a completely changing, dynamic, diverse cultural mix now, and how important it is for us to understand it and do better, do what we can with it. The most important thing when designing any building is something that David was always very big on, is to move people, to create a space that touches people, that shows them the world in a different way. So you always try to put some beauty, which is an elusive word to conjure up, but I think it's an important thing that we all look for in life.
Julie, we're here today to celebrate you. You're an accomplished architect. You're an advocate for architecture. You've spent a life celebrating architecture and what it can do and the power to transform. Your career in architecture is broad. You're an architect at the desk. You're a designer of wonderful buildings. You're an educator. You're a community activist, and you're a very successful one at that. It is my enormous honour and privilege, on behalf of the President of the Institute of Architects, Te Kāhui Whaihanga, to award you the Gold Medal 2021.
Oh man, oh how beautiful. Wow, isn't it beautiful? I have to say, the gold medal carries some heft with it.
Yes.
And this is truly a great honour. Thank you. And I'd just like to thank the Institute and the selection panel for even considering me. So thank you very much. And I just want to acknowledge people along the way, you know, my family and whānau, my mother, Vern and Rhonda and Bruce, who started it all. And of course, David, who you all know, who'd be right chuffed to be here. And interestingly enough, I counted it back. David received the gold medal at exactly the same age as I am. So, yeah, and I was very lucky to sort of spend my adult life with him. So that was great. And then, of course, he came with the wonderful Julian. And, so, and it's been a great privilege and such a support for me through all those years, and for both of us, David and I. So now with Rachel and Julian in the office, and so Mitchell, Stout, Dodder and such great capable hands. And it's lovely to feel the continuation of all that conversation. So, and I'd like to thank some of those who can't be here. Firstly, Amanda Reynolds, who got me started in all this, in this urban design and the city business in the first place. Don McRae, dear Don, and also my posse of the last 10, 15 years, Urban Auckland. It's been great riding with you guys. and in particular, Malcolm Walker, who isn't here tonight. And I just want to finish by saying, David and I, we both got fairly ordinary degrees, no honours students in this house. But David would often say, David would say, you don't want to peak too early. And I would just like to officially announce, I've peaked. Thank you.